think the main way to at least put it to start is how Ollie Marmol described it right after the game. Here he was post-game.
At some point, you just have to do something about it. You keep getting punched in the face, punch back. You don't score after the third. You have the lead in the ninth. Finish the game.
Finish the game. They did not finish the game.
Nope, they did not.
It's not the only time it's happened either.
No, it happens a lot.
It just, once again, is another layer peeled back. What this 2023 St. Louis Cardinals team, we keep peeling back all of these layers of what they're going to show us as far as, let's be honest, futility. That's what it is right now. Futility from this team. And I don't know what's causing it. I don't know if there's one person to blame. There's not one person to blame.
I can think of probably 30.
There's at least 30. That's where you start, and then you branch out from there. It is just incredible how a moment like you had in the bottom of the second inning when you thought, oh, it's so predictable. The Cardinals are going to load the bases. There's going to be 2 outs, and they'll have a chance to score to try and maybe tie the game after falling behind early 2-0. And then they show you something that they have not shown a whole lot of this year. Tommy Edman delivering a grand slam, and the building all of a sudden burst to life, and you thought, okay, today's going to be different. Today, they're going to find a way to win this game. They're not going to be swept today. It's not going to feel that great. You're still way low in the standings, but at least you've got something to hang your hat on after Tommy Edman delivered a little bit of life. And then it just falls flat from there. Just incredible. Incredible how the tailspin of the final few innings went against the Cardinals to where they couldn't even create a good moment from what happened earlier in the game. It's just incredible.
It doesn't happen by magic, though. These things don't just happen to the St. Louis Cardinals. They're actively losing these games. Like, we have to let it go with the bad bounces and the bad breaks and you didn't hear excuses from Ollie Marmol after the game today because there aren't any. At some point, you just have to go and do it. Producer Chris, I hope you remember where the dump button is anyway. That's something that maybe you just got to brush up on. I'm just kidding.
It's big and red, hard to miss.
All right, good. I'll try to control myself then. But it's just inexplicable, Andy. Like, what is there even left to say? This game had the vibe of, like you said, okay, finally they're going to at least kind of take the final game of the series. They're not going to, at least they got this one. You can try and build on that. We've said that before as well when they've won the final game of a series to avoid a sweep. But outside of Tommy Edman hitting a grand slam today, the offense was pitiful, just as they have been for the better part of 2 weeks. And this needed to be a top 5, top 3 offense with the way this team was constructed. John Mozeliak built it. The pitching was going to be middle of the pack, you kind of figured. And you had a lot of things working against the type of pitching staff that he put together, that he allowed to persist because he said, well, we got 6 pitchers, we've got 7 pitchers, whatever. They're among the worst in the league in swinging strike rate by their pitchers. And their starting pitchers are even worse than their team-wide average. Today, Jordan Montgomery was pitiful in the first inning and then locked it down and was as good as we've seen him all year for the next however many innings it was. And the offense didn't really fix itself today. Don't look at those 5 runs and say, well, they scored 5 runs. Tommy Edman had 1 swing.
Yeah.
Other than that, you've got 8 guys that are culpable. Because time and time again, Andy, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen this team, players on this offense, take the best pitch that they will see in a clutch at bat. In a key spot, they are taking the best pitch that they're going to see, and you know it right when it happens. You go, they're not going to get a better one than that. The one that they're going to have to serve into the outfield or hit for extra bases or draw a walk-on, whatever they've got to do, it's not going to be that pitch because that's the one that they let go by. I mean, it's just every little thing that you could point to right now with this Cardinals team, you're right. Any gripe that you have, you're right. Giovanni Gallegos blew the game. He did.
Yeah.
But don't tell me about bullpen management and Ollie Marmol, and that it's because of bullpen management.
Yeah, seriously. Are you kidding me? I get so turned off by it's all Ollie Marmol's fault.
He has the guys that are in his bullpen. That's who he's allowed. That's who he is eligible.
And he used the
on
best
MLB
guys.
rules to put in.
And he used the best guys.
until you go to Steven Matz in the 10th. But again, he only has the guys left that he has left. Ryan Helsley isn't walking through that door, right? Like they only have who they have in the bullpen, and you can look at damn near every reliever has pitched over the past few days, and almost all of them have given up runs. It's not just one or two guys, and all you can go, yeah, I need to avoid that guy. You have to use the guys that you have. Who provided those pitchers? Who decided in the offseason that this was the team that was going to work out? That's where because I'm going back and forth. You might be able to tell it in my voice. A lot of Cardinals fans from Twitter, because I get it. People are frustrated with Ollie Marmol, and if they want to fire Ollie Marmol, go right ahead. Do it. I don't think it's the right move. I think it's short-sighted because the problems with this Cardinals go beyond the manager of the team. But you know what? The manager of the team's job is to guide the team through the valleys when they have them. And I think Ollie is doing the things that he needs to be doing to guide. I still have some strategic differences that I would change, lineup things, more tactical things like that. But generally, I don't have a lot of qualms with the way Ollie is going about trying to be the shepherd through this storm for this team. But that being said, eventually the messaging, if it's fallen on deaf ears, Andy, then I don't even know. But like I said, I think you're misguided in the way that you're looking at this. If you go, I need my pound of flesh, fire the manager. Go ahead. Like, I have lost the emotional stability anymore, Andy, to explain to people why I don't agree with that. And they very well might do it at some point. If they're going to do it, it's going to be today. It's going to be before the next time they play. They play on Friday in New York. If they're going to do it, they're probably going to do it right now. But I don't expect it. But would I fall out of my chair if it happened? No, because I see it just the way everybody else does. They're playing terrible baseball and they're finding ways to lose. But my goodness, I could make a list 100 bullet points long of the things that are wrong with this Cardinals team right now.
So many.
And I don't know how high on the list Ollie Marmol would be, but I don't think it wouldn't be as high as a lot of Cardinals fans who just say, hey, who's the manager of this team? I am going to need my pound of flesh. That's what I feel is going on. And it's got me a little fired up today, which is not in his defense, because again, he's the manager. They're 15 games below 500. This isn't Mike Matheny getting fired at a one game above 500 record. This is way worse than anything that. But you know what? I don't know if this roster is built as effectively as those were. And so there are a lot of things going on here.
That's the thing.
A lot of things going on here.
You can fire Ollie Marmol if you want, but I don't think it solves your problem. I don't think it solves it. I don't think it saves the season.
It does. Maybe it does. Maybe they wake up because they realize, wow, we lost the guy a job because of our inability to execute. Maybe that's what they need. But, man, that feels like a hockey move to me. Hockey players, hockey coaches, executives, that's kind of the way it goes in hockey. Yeah, I don't care. Just fire a guy. Whatever.
Fire somebody.
Like, it's still a guy's job. It's still a guy's livelihood. And listen, and this is going to sound dumb, but to me, I genuinely believe it. If the Cardinals don't have this historically bad start to this season, which is now almost halfway through the 2023 season, if they don't have this take place, you're not talking about Ollie Marmol's job for a decade. I really do think that. But now we're finding out what a Cardinals organization as a whole, every player, every coach, the manager, everybody in that front office has not experienced this, and they don't know what to do with themselves. All of them. And so you got the blind leading the blind. If they want to fire the manager, go ahead. The guy who's then going to replace it, I don't know that he's got a handle on this situation either. I mean, John Mozeliak's going to have a good legacy with the Cardinals, but it has a chance to go down in flames in terms of the way his tenure ended. Because we could be looking at it, and I don't know what needs to be done specifically. Like you said, Andy, there's not like one guy or one thing that you're going to point to.
No.
But it is just grasping at straws, looking for needles in the haystack. It is all of the analogies you want to throw at it, and it is bad right now for this team.
Let us know your thoughts, Cardinal fans. 875-KTGR. Call or text us, 573-875-5847. We'll go to Alex here on the KTGR hotline. Alex, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. What you got?
So I hear everything. I am definitely one of the people that leans towards firing Ollie Marmol. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact I was one of the people that was pissed off when Shook got fired. And I definitely understand that probably a lot of the issues that the Cardinals have right now stems from the roster that Ollie was given. But at the same time, when you're a manager or coach in any sport, you have to inspire those that play for you. And I think for the past few weeks, you don't see any piece of that. No life, nothing, no sense to fight for even each other. So if you can't even fight for one another, how are you supposed to, expect to come out of this? And reality is they're 15 games below 500 now or whatever it is. I didn't even get to watch the game today. But you're 15 games below 500 and you're only 8.5 out or 9 out, whatever it is, because the rest of the division sucks. I don't see any reason. I think you can name more reasons than not why Ollie Marmol should be fired than keep his job.
Yeah, I mean, I understand doesn't look good. Appreciate the call, Alex, here on the Big Show, KTGR. I keep going back to the fact that, look, you can put all of this blame and vitriol on Ollie Marmol as you want and say, it's that public enemy number one should be Ollie Marmol in this sense. Yeah, a whole lot of people need to be blamed, but it's Ollie Marmol. Okay, if you really think that, fine, but realize that he's in this position because John Mozeliak decided to say goodbye to an otherwise successful manager in Mike Schilt and said, all right, Ollie, here's your chance to show us what you got. Every problem that you can point to, I think, with this team points back to Mo. That's honestly what it is.
And if you want to say, hey, man, I was from the beginning someone who said Mike Schilt should have never lost his job, then that, you know what, you've got a leg to stand on right now. I do think there are some things that happened that went on behind the scenes, and we'll probably never know the full scope of it, that led to that. And the Cardinals, just like they did trying to explain Wilson Contreras and the whole deal with him earlier this season about how they were going to make him an outfielder, but just kidding, or all of it, terrible messaging. Organization doesn't know how to deliver a message. I think the same thing happened when it came to the Schilt firing, that they just did not know how to articulate what it is and the reasons behind it. But that's definitely something that you're hearing a lot more talk about lately, how Mike Schilt is just laughing from afar because he sees the way the Cardinal way has been desecrated, and he wouldn't have allowed it to happen, I don't believe. But at the same time, can you know that for sure with the group of players that are here that are thrown out on that field every day? Landon texted in 875-KTGR. Get him in. The Texan calls. He says, I know it would have been an 8-out save, but taking Hicks out was a dumb decision. Untouchable, hitting 101 to 103 in the eighth. Ollie was asked about this, Andy. I want to get your thoughts, too, on whether you think that was something to consider. Ollie was asked about it, and he just flatly, I think it was Frank Cusimano, he just flatly said no.
Yeah.
It's only, like, the way you structure it is you've got your closer who is fresh and has not pitched in days, and now you've got a chance to throw him. He's been your best reliever all year. Jordan Hicks was the guy that 2 days ago, Cardinals fans were saying Ollie was a terrible manager because he brought him into a game. Like, do you realize how... I get it. Maybe Landon wasn't one of those guys saying that on Monday, but that is genuinely the way things are. You can't just go with the breeze on this. You got to have these thoughts kind of in the moment to realize, hey, listen, Jordan Hicks did look good today. How often do they go 8-out save with anybody, let alone a guy who you've seen falter in many ways so far this year? It wasn't even a consideration for the manager, and I understand why not. You have your closer well rested. Just like he said postgame, at some point you just have to do it. Just go do it. And Gio let the team down today, but the entire offense let the team down because you know what they did, Andy? They took it for granted. They took a 5-2 lead for granted. They took Tommy Edmonds' grand slam for granted and said, hey, we've got the lead. All right, we're going to win a game. They did not play in basketball. You'd say play a full 40 minutes in college basketball.
Right,
in NFL, full 60 minutes. Whatever you'd call it in baseball,
full nine
play
innings?
the full Manfred. Maybe 10 if it was.
Yeah.
You got to play the full 9, Andy, and they didn't. Offensively, they didn't. They rested on their laurels. You cannot tell me otherwise. Gio's to blame. Offense is to blame. The plate approaches that I saw, once again, you're taking the pitches they're taking instead of the ones that you could have swung at. It's just absolutely backwards. It's a team that's lost. They are lost. And yes, it's the job of the manager to be the shepherd, to guide it back, and he hasn't inspired the life in the team. And so if that's the way you feel about it, I could see just the notion of, need a shakeup. That's why you make a move here. Again, I think that's short-sighted, and it's a little bit takes the human element out of it, which I get it. It's a business, and so that part of it I understand. But if we're talking strategic decisions, man, I got so many tweets today where people said what Ollie Marmol did. We knew he was a bad manager last year in the playoffs because Ryan Helsley. I'm like, holy crap, we're still on this. So I think people are just upset and mad, and they're kind of set in their ways with a lot of the things they feel. Some of them I agree with, Andy. Some of them I don't. But if you want to make the case that Ollie Marmol from an emotional standpoint, has to get the most out of this team and get them to fight a little bit, you've got no qualms from me. I completely agree with that. And maybe that's what he was trying to do today with a little bit of fire after the game. We'll see if that ends up being something he's allowed to see through or not. Again, I don't expect a move, but if it were to happen, I mean, listen to us, Andy. Doesn't it feel like the kind of day that it would? So
today
I don't know.
Would feel like one of those days. Yeah, it's a grim one. 875 KTGR. Give us a call or a text. Let's go to Brad here on the KTGR hotline. Brad, how are you?
Guys, I'm not good.
Yes, we understand.
Thank you,
Join the club.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome, and you're hitting every single thing right on point. But unfortunately for us Cardinal fans, there's about 10 things that we have to address, and we can't. Today, yes, Gio was a strike away from closing it out. He didn't get it done. But then you got a guy that's 0-7 in Matz. So he had a couple relief appearances before this. You're like, okay, maybe he's a one-inning guy with no pressure. Maybe he can do okay. But the minute the pressure's there, the guy doesn't pitch well. And so, yeah, we can fire Ollie. We can send Matz to the minors. We could send Matz on a ship to Japan. I don't care. But there are some weird things that us Cardinal fans are not used to. Cardinal fans are used to classy St. Louis baseball. We've always been known as the class act. And unfortunately, when something weird happened, the firing of Schultz, it was a little weird. It was a little unclassy. And everybody's like, oh, this is weird. And then it was easy to forget because you got Ollie in a 90-win season last year. And, yeah, there were some playoff blunders, but it's easy to forget about Schultz. And now we're all of a sudden thinking about it all over again because Ollie's not producing. The other thing I want to say real quick is last year, Waino wasn't on his last year. It was Pujols and Molina. And those are our three leaders that I think would take the locker room by storm. And I don't think Waino is doing it this year because, one, it's his last year, and two, he hasn't been with the team the whole time. I don't know if he doesn't feel like he can, but I want to hear in the news that Wainwright goes into the locker room and just unloads. And everybody knows that's probably not going to happen, but that's what needs to happen. We need a leader. And right now it seems like there is no leader on that team, and the manager seems very content with saying, well, we're just going to ride this out. We're going to ride this out. But at some point, heads are going to be rolling, and people are going to get fired, and people are going to get demoted. And I hate to say it, but we're at that point. Sorry. Thank you for listening. Very disgruntled Cardinal fan here.
We understand,
like
Brad. Appreciate the call here on the Big Show, KTGR. Yeah, seriously, get your thoughts.
875,
yes.
It's 5730 area code, 875 KTGR or 875-5847 is how you give us a call or a text. We're getting some texts coming in. So many bad decisions out of Mozeliak. At what point does it fall on his shoulders? And Joe, texting in from the 573, even made a list. Schilt firing, bad trades, Matt signing. He doesn't like the Marmol hiring. Free agent signings that have often backfired and have been costly. The latest one potentially being Wilson Contreras, whose batting average is 198 now for the season. He wasn't in there today, though, so you can't blame him. His backup struck out a bunch of times. Andy, what do you think about the Matz move in the 10th inning? Because that's one that Brad mentioned that I don't like. Here's my thing. Is Matz been good this year? Absolutely not. He did have one lefty coming up in that spot. I don't know if any of the guys that he faced were switch batters and therefore would have maybe been stronger from the left side, but there was only one lefty. You saw him face some righties. He gives up a bunch of hits. It's kind of what he does. It's kind of what this whole pitching staff does. They're 28th in MLB coming into today in swinging strike rate. They don't have guys that miss bats, even though Montgomery did have a solid day of doing that eventually. Generally, they just don't miss very many bats. And in the modern game, when you can't shift the way you want to and you've got a pitch clock, the clock is on you, it's difficult to say we're going to pitch to contact. And every time we get into a two-strike count, we're just going to hope they hit it to somebody instead of into a hole. That's basically where the Cardinals have been this year, and it's absolutely coming back to bite them in the ass. But, Andy, what do you think of the decision to go to Matz? Because we can go through this bullpen and maybe find a guy that you could argue is a little better, but you're hard-pressed to find somebody who has not failed this week.
Especially when less than 24 hours ago they had to spend a lot of the bullpen because Jack Flaherty only lasted a 4 1/3. Like, they had to spend Jake Woodford. They had to spend Drew Verhagen. I mean, maybe you could say
Cabrera.
Genesis Cabrera, too. You could have maybe gone Palante there. You could have maybe gone
Here's what I would
Chris
do.
Stratton.
Here's what I would do.
I don't know.
The one thing I would do is I would go Palante, and I would intentionally walk the first batter, don't care who it is. Or maybe Palante's thrown some heat this year, so maybe what you do is you say, Palante, go strike out that lefty, and then we're walking the next guy, and we're setting up the double play, because that's the only hope that you have. And that's the way this team has been built. That is, I'm telling you, they don't have guys. Who's going to come out of that bullpen and get you a strikeout? I saw some people upset that Verhagen was wasted for a couple of outs at the end of last night's game. Guess what? I mean, the other guys couldn't finish it. This is the bullpen that you have. These are the guys that Ollie Marmol is looking to. And so he went with Matz. I don't feel good about any one of those guys in that Cardinal bullpen coming into a game in the 10th inning with a Manfred man on second. I don't think there's one guy in that bullpen who I go, yep, that guy's going to keep that runner stationed at second base.
Right.
You could probably look on the other side to San Francisco and find about 7 or 8 guys who, against this Cardinals team, are probably going to keep that dude's feet glued to the second base bag. And guess what? That's what happened. The Cardinals didn't even advance him in the bottom of the 10th. There's no fight. There's no finish. Again, 5 runs. I don't want to hear about how the offense did well today because they scored 5 runs. They scored in 2 separate innings in total, and one of them was on a singular swing by their number 9-hole batter, who hit one over the fence with the bases loaded. It was an absolute anomaly that hasn't happened at all over the past couple of weeks. The offense is to blame. The bullpen is to blame. Ollie Marmol, people say, oh, he sounds so smug in his post-game shows. What would you say if you were in his chair?
Yeah,
what
seriously.
would you, honest to goodness, what would you say? Because it's, you know what he does? He goes into his office and he probably snaps bats. You know, I'm telling you, like, what would you do if you were managing this team and you go, I can't go out there and do it for him. People are mad about the manager because that's the nature of sports fandom, and I get it. Cardinals fans should be frustrated as hell. It's been ugly, and this is not Cardinal baseball as we know it. But I don't get I want to say and nitpick he's smug in the postgame. He calls out his players in the postgame. The whole team should be aired out in the dang postgame because they are not executing. So whether it's, and he kind of summed it up really nicely. He said very flatly, you could tell he was upset. You have a lead going into the 9th. You don't score a run after the 3rd inning, but you had the lead anyway. At some point, you got to just do it. And they didn't. Once again, they're a season worst, 15 games below 500. Your St. Louis Cardinals.
Yep, 875 KTGR. Call or text us with your thoughts. I know Jim's been holding a while, so let's go to Jim here on the KTGR hotline. Jim, how are you?
What drives me wild, they all take the first pitch. Time after
they do,
time
Jim.
after
They
time.
do. They do, unless they bounce out to the pitcher like Goldie did the other night.
Well,
to end
I
the
mean,
game.
there are exceptions, but percentage-wise,
I
that's
agree.
not right.
I agree with you.
And the other thing, I want to talk about yesterday's game. In the first inning, bases loaded, nobody out. Contreras is at bat. He's not hitting his weight. Why not make him bunt? Because the defense was back deep, going for a double play and give up a run. But no, we swing for a home run and strike out. I think the whole thing started by not getting us enough help in the pitching department in the off season. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jim, here on the Big Show with KTGR. Yeah, that's a problem.
I don't know if Contreras can bunt. I don't know if he does it.
And
I don't know.
What was the score at that point? I mean,
they were down 2. Was it 2-0 Giants to bottom
at
of the
that
first
point,
yesterday?
Why even bunt? Like, you got to get more runs.
But Cardinals fans are frustrated because they're like, listen, we can only score on the homer, which is true. And I've kind of poked fun at Cardinals fans who worry about that because if Tommy Edman bloops a single instead of homering today, the game doesn't even go 10 innings because you've already lost it at that point if you're the Cardinals. Like, home runs are good. We don't have to poo-poo home runs. But I also understand that there are situations where you go, we just need the one. You just got to add on and get the one run right now to be able to get a little insurance. And they don't put themselves into those positions. And when they are in those positions, they can't come through with just the base hit. And so I get it. I think it's to poo-poo the home run is a little bit silly, but I understand the heart of where Cardinals fans are coming from. And Jim there is just saying, you got to be able to get something out of that spot. Now, what I'll say is the Cardinals tied the game with a couple of runs in that first inning yesterday, but they didn't do enough. You need 5 runs. You need a rally. You need to bat around when you go bases loaded, nobody out. They are falling flat in every regard, Andy. That's what's so hard. Who was it, Brad, that called and said, well, we got 10 things we could talk about. We don't have the time to do it all. It's brutal, man.
There's no
I've never seen it. I said yesterday, we didn't even talk about last night's game because we didn't have a big show in between, but last night was just an absolute clunker, an embarrassment, where they were out of it by the fifth inning. It lasted over 3 hours, but you knew about halfway through that you were wasting your time if you were going to stay at that ballgame. This is the St. Louis Cardinals in 2023. I get people want to just fire the manager because it's an easy fix. He's got some culpability for this. He does, and they might decide that he's got enough of it to let go of him, but it's so much deeper than that, Andy. We would need a 4-hour big show to get through it all.
So much.
We really would.
Well, until we do get a 4-hour big show someday, somehow, give us your thoughts in the here and now at 875 KTGR on yet another rough day for the St. Louis Cardinals. We're well up against the break, so we'll take one, and we'll get to more of your Cardinals thoughts next. Keep giving us your thoughts on the Cardinals yet again, losing a lead and losing a game in some pretty spectacular fashion. 875 KTGR. Call or text us. Alex is with us here on the KTGR hotline. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. I actually called it in earlier and got disconnected, so sorry for doubling up.
What you got?
It was just kind of more things on Ollie Marmol because I listened to a caller earlier. My main issue with Ollie is I get it. He's fielding the team he's got. But it has to do with not doing little things like playing small ball. Now, you can't ask Wilson Contreras to bunt. But you got guys like Tommy Edman. You have guys like Newt Barr. And obviously he's hurt right now. But doing something, stealing. I live in Atlanta. I went to a Braves game the other day, and I look up on the scoreboard, and I see that the Cardinals are third in the National League in home runs. And the comment was made, I think it was Brenden earlier, talking about, how they can't do anything but hit a home run to generate offense. I think part of that falls on the manager, not changing things up. Also, if you go back to Schilt in his time, it's not like it was all, great. But there were times where the team struggled. At the All-Star break, they were not a very good team. But he always had a pulse in the team to change up the lineup. There was a point where Goldschmidt was hitting second. He moved him back to third to double him up with Arenado. They had Arenado hitting third at one point. Just mixing it up. And to me, the only reason why Jordan Walker's hitting fifth today is because Contreras isn't in the lineup. Now, based on what happened last night, you could argue that Contreras wasn't hitting fifth no matter what. But at the same time, how many times have we seen Contreras hit fifth? Like, when is something going to change to try to generate some kind of different look? Because if you're another opposing team and you're going to get the same look every time, if it's a righty, okay, Brendan Donovan's going to lead off. If it's a lefty, then Edman's going to lead off. You know the exact game plan the Cardinals are coming in with. Why not change something up? That does fall.
Appreciate it, Alex. We got to cut you off, man. We appreciate the call, though. We appreciate the passion, and I think he's got points. Like, I would have said Contreras, when he comes back into the lineup tomorrow, Andy, he's got to move down. He's got to. Jordan Walker's swinging the bat pretty well. I'm seeing good ABs out of Carlson. It's up to the manager to make some of these decisions and try to move things and shake things when things, shake the tree a little bit, right? Like, it can't hurt. And I think he's tried to do that in some ways, but in others, there could be maybe more. And so I'm in agreement there, Andy, but like we've talked about, there's so many things going on. It's so difficult, I think, to just point to, do this and that, and then bang, you're fixed.
Yeah.
I don't know what fixes it, Andy.
Like, really every move you make is going to be a stab in the dark. Like, that, you don't know.
Kind of feels that way.
You don't know if changing the manager is going to fix things. You don't know that. You don't know if putting, Goldschmidt fourth or Arenado in a different spot where he needs. You don't know what that shuffling's going to do. It's all stabs in the dark.
It's worth trying some of them because it cannot get worse than it is right now. But I think it does boil back to what you said earlier and what we're getting in from Jesse on the text line, 573-875-5847. John Mozeliak is the main problem. His philosophies are stale. Cardinals need a total revamp of the front office perspective. The model, Andy, we've talked about the model and whether the model is sustainable in this current era.
I don't know if it is or not. It's definitely worked for the last however long, 15 years that Mo's been at the head of baseball.
He's been great,
ops.
Man.
Yeah, he hasn't had a losing season. Like, and look,
first.
There are folks on Facebook. We have. You can also comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/KTGR Big Show. Devin is like standing up for Mo, saying, no, it's not really Mo's fault as much. I would blame Marmol a little bit more, but I don't know if I would agree with that, because I think a lot of the problems, again, they all kind of fall back on the bedrock of the guy who constructed this roster and this coaching staff in the first place. I just, again, don't know what is the main problem. And there isn't
There's more than one main one, I think.
Right.
Like you can't just go, here it is. If I were to point to one main problem, I don't know how I could choose between the team's either refusal to acknowledge or the fact that they were so late to adopt the realization that they can't pitch to contact and have success in this MLB season. It's not going to work, not as they introduce new rules, not as you lose your bedrock of Yadier Molina behind the plate, not as you lose Mike Maddox as your pitching coach. Like, you can't just assume little tiny improvements and gradual changes in the offseason we're going to fix what this pitching staff was going to need to do. And I'm talking starters, I'm talking bullpen. I don't know if it's that, Andy, or if it's just the absolute inability to maintain a plate approach in clutch situations for this team. Those are kind of the two big things that I guess I would point to just on the field wise, but one's as equally big as the other. It's so difficult to just pare it down and say, hey, this is what it is. Caleb from Jeff City wants to know, how can you invest $90 million into a guy and then throw him under the bus because of the poor pitching performances? And he mentions Molina and all the aspects that we've kind of talked about. That's the nail on the head. It's like the Cardinals looked at this and they could have seen a lot of these things coming. I think we can now retroactively piece it all together and say, oh, how did you not know that you were going to have pitching problems with all these things going on? And then they literally a few weeks into the season kind of look at it and go, Wilson Contreras, man, you got to be better. And if that's not what they were doing behind the scenes, that's at least the way they found a way to portray it publicly. Because, again, what are they poor at? Typically, it's messaging of these situations. And if they're as bad at the messaging within that clubhouse as they are in the messaging to the public, then I guess we figured out what the problem is. But I'd like to refuse to believe that that's the case, but maybe I've got my head in the sand, Andy, because I do believe that Ollie Marmol has got some good guiding principles that he adheres to. I don't know if John Mozeliak does in terms of the model and again, we haven't seen him in public other than some one-on-one interviews here and there since April. I mean, it is what it is at this point, and it's hard to feel like it's not all crumbling down. It's really difficult. James asked how long before KC and STL have the two worst records. He's on that Oakland train, I guess, Andy.
Might not
it's just
have to wait too long. Two teams going in opposite directions right now. We'll say
really
that.
Might not. Joel said, I've always felt if everyone's the problem is at the top. He's blaming management. It's possible we need an out-of-organization hire and new perspective. Dude, that's not something that I ever could see Bill DeWitt doing, but he might be right. Like, for me, if I look to Mo and say, hey, can you handle this deadline where we're probably not winning, but it's going to be a sell-off of the short-term assets, but we're retooling because 2024 we refuse to do this again, and so get us the pieces we need at this deadline, fix the roster clogs that you've allowed to persist on this team. Can you do it or not? No? Okay, Randy Flores, come on down. You're the scouting director. You've had some good drafts, bringing in some talent over the last few years. It's your show now. Go ahead and do it. I think he's a guy that could be capable of it. It's not a knock on Mike Gersh. I just believe that Randy Flores has demonstrated with the talent he's brought in, the ability to kind of evaluate and make some good things happen. But again, they're not going to fire Mo. It's going to have to be one of those things that happens collectively. And then to think that they could be so bereft of it looking anything like the Cardinal way this year that they would go outside the org, I don't think it would happen, Andy, but I can't say that it's a terrible idea with what we're seeing, other than the fact that I kind of do think Flo could do a nice job.
I think so, too. I mean, he's a good guy. He's definitely got the experience of trying to identify guys that can help the organization.
He's drafted well.
Right? Yeah, like it's been good to see him in that role. Can he do it in the sort of the general manager or head of baseball operations spot, whatever it is, lead baseball executive? Remains to be seen. But man, it's gonna be really hard to see what happens with Mo here.
Oh no,
what happened,
Andy? Greg has chimed in with the reason that all of this has happened.
What happened?
The last couple of weeks.
What happened?
Greg from Como. This is karma for putting all the other teams within the division in the bottom five.
Oh,
and now, bam,
look,
the Cardinals
what
are there.
You created,
what
Brenden.
You weren't here for this, Chris.
Chris was not here for this.
We did a top five, bottom five, and I went a little bit off book, and I said, worst team in baseball, it's the Athletics. And then I went down the list. The other four were all NL Central teams besides the Cardinals.
To prove
the point that I believed in this team to win the division. But that's been a minute, Chris, and a lot has changed over the last week or so. Remember when my percentage of the Cardinals to win the division, I gave them like an 80% chance.
It's pretty high.
They were like 4.5 games out at that point. I think it was right before the Reds, the first Red series, whatever it was. And I was around 80. And then I dropped it to 50. And then I moved it back up to 60. And then yesterday, Andy, I was like, listen, I can't in good conscience keep it up there. What did I tell you, 30% or something?
Yeah, I think you said 30%.
There are 5 teams in the NL Central. And so a 20% chance would assume everybody has about an even shot. I'll give the Cardinals about 11%, which that might still be too high. But
it might
it's
still be. Yeah.
I don't believe anymore. A miracle will have to happen to fix it, is the way it really feels. And in 3 weeks, we might see the Cardinals rattle off another 12-4 stretch, and then it's all good. But right now, it truly feels like it would. They'd still be, 7-8 games below 500, so maybe not.
So are you going to be buying or selling at the trade deadline when you're still 7 under 500? I mean,
listen, you're trading Montgomery, you're trading Flaherty, you're trading Hicks, because those are all on expiring contracts, and everybody would like to have some decent pitching, and all those guys are decent. None of them are superstars, but they're all decent, and you could get a couple of pieces for them. You put Dakota Hudson back in the rotation. You throw Steven Matz back in the rotation because you just have to at that point. So that's the Cardinals' version of selling. Don't talk to me about Goldschmidt and Arenado, because those two guys need to help this team win games next year, is where I am right now. My heart has taken a lot of hits recently, Andy, so who knows what I'll be thinking in about a month if this continues on the trajectory that it's on. But for now, I am still steadfast. You cannot make trades like Goldie and Arenado, people that should help you win baseball games next year, because it should not be allowable for the St. Louis Cardinals to go into a season saying, we might not win baseball games. So for right now, that's where I'm at.
A lot more to talk about when it comes to the Cardinals. Have they hit rock bottom? Is this it? Is this rock bottom for the Cardinals? 15 games under 500 in mid-June.
Dear God, I hope so.
Yeah, that's the hope, at least, right? But there's a whole lot more. Anymore. So you could say there's a lot more season. Calm down. You can turn it around, but there's also a whole lot more season to keep driving further and further down. Yep.
You say there's more time, but that means there's more time. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Boy.
So that's the other side of it.